They thought they were targeting just another quiet rest stop along Interstate 40. When the Steel Vipers motorcycle gang rolled into Crosswind Junction, all they saw was an aging Marine veteran sitting alone at the counter, a few scattered truckers minding their own business, and an easy mark to expand their criminal empire. What they didn't realize was that James Conner wasn't just any former Marine. He was Force Recon with extensive experience in counter-narcotics operations. His quiet demeanor masked a strategic mind that had dismantled drug cartels across 3 continents. By the time the dust settled, the Steel Vipers would learn a hard lesson about judging a book by its cover, and their simple act of intimidation would trigger the takedown of a $700 million criminal empire spanning 5 states. This is the story of how 2 bikers picked the wrong veteran to intimidate, and how one man's courage inspired an entire community to take back their roads. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have a special story for you. The evening sun cast long shadows across Crosswind Junction rest stop, its neon sign flickering to life as dusk settled in. James Conner sat at his usual spot at the counter, methodically reviewing route maps while sipping his 3rd cup of coffee. 20 years of military service had ingrained in him a habit of positioning himself where he could see both entrances while keeping his back to the wall. Sarah Martinez approached with a fresh pot of coffee, her cheerful demeanor a constant source of warmth in the diner. The steam rose from the pot as she moved with practiced efficiency between the scattered customers. "Need a refill, James?" she asked, already tilting the pot toward his cup. "Thanks, Sarah. Always tastes better when you make it." She smiled, filling his cup. "You say that every time." "And I mean it every time." The peaceful evening routine shattered as 2 motorcycles roared into the parking lot, their straight pipes deliberately loud enough to set everyone's teeth on edge. James didn't look up from his maps, but his awareness shifted instantly. Through the reflection in the chrome coffee machine, he watched 2 men dismount their bikes, both wearing leather vests adorned with the distinctive Steel Vipers MC patches. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she set down the coffee pot. "Oh no," she whispered. "Those are the ones Linda warned us about." James gave her a reassuring nod. "It's okay, Sarah. Just go about your business like normal." The door chimed as the bikers entered. The taller one, sporting a graying beard and cold eyes, swaggered in first. A patch on his vest identified him as Drake. His companion, younger and wiry with a snake tattoo coiling up his neck, followed close behind. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop several degrees. "Well, ain't this cozy?" Drake drawled, his voice carrying an edge of mockery. "Real nice setup you got here." Linda Chen, the rest stop's owner, emerged from the kitchen. Her face remained neutral, but James noticed her right hand sliding beneath the counter where he knew she kept a baseball bat. "Welcome to Crosswind Junction. What can I get you, gentlemen?" The younger biker, who went by Razor, smirked and leaned against the counter. "How about everything in the register for starters?" The few other customers in the diner tensed visibly. A trucker near the door slowly set down his fork. A family of 3 huddled closer together, the father instinctively moving to shield his wife and young daughter. Drake chuckled, placing a hand on Razor's shoulder. "Easy there, brother. We're just here to talk business." He turned to Linda. "See, this stretch of highway's under new management. Steel Vipers are expanding our territory, and we're here to discuss your monthly protection fees." James continued studying his maps, but his muscles coiled imperceptibly, ready for action. He'd seen this pattern before, both in the Marines and after. Small gangs moving into new territory always started with intimidation, establishing fear before revealing their true operations. Linda's voice remained steady. "This is a family establishment. We don't need any protection." "Everyone needs protection," Drake replied, his tone darkening. "Bad things happen to businesses that don't understand that. Equipment breaks down, supplies go missing, customers have accidents." Razor wandered toward the family's table, deliberately bumping their daughter's chair. The little girl whimpered, clutching her mother's arm. That's when James spoke, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command. The lady said she's not interested. The diner fell silent. Drake turned slowly, seeming to notice James for the first time. Well, looks like we got ourselves a hero. He approached the counter, looming over James. This ain't your business, old-timer. James finally looked up from his maps, meeting Drake's gaze. His eyes were steady, showing neither fear nor aggression. You're making it my business. That right? Drake leaned closer. And just who do you think you are? Just a guy trying to enjoy his coffee. James's voice remained level. But I've got a pretty good idea who you are. Steel Vipers MC, moving up from Texas, trying to establish new territory. You start with intimidation at truck stops and diners, then move on to protection rackets, then drugs. Drake's eyes narrowed. You seem to know a lot about it. I know enough to tell you you're making a mistake. Razor moved toward James, his hand drifting toward his belt. Only mistake being made is by you, old man. James didn't move, didn't even tense up. He simply took another sip of his coffee. Two choices, gentlemen. You can walk out that door, get on your bikes, and find somewhere else to cause trouble. Or you can try whatever you're thinking about trying, and we'll see how that works out for everyone. Something in James's tone, the absolute certainty in his voice, made Razor hesitate. Drake studied James more carefully now, noting the military precision of his posture, the deliberate way he controlled his space. You're the one making a mistake, Drake said, though his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. This ain't over. James nodded slightly. It is for tonight. Drake backed away slowly, maintaining eye contact. Come on, Razor. We'll finish this conversation another time. The bikers retreated, their attempts at intimidation falling flat in the face of James's calm resistance. As they mounted their bikes, Drake pointed two fingers at his eyes, then at the diner, a clear signal that they'd be watching. Once the roar of motorcycles faded, the tension in the diner broke. The father at the family's table approached James. Thank you, sir. I don't know what would have happened if... James cut him off gently. Nothing was going to happen to your family. Not here. He turned to Linda. But you might want to call Sheriff Cooper. Let him know the Steel Vipers are moving into his territory. Linda nodded, already reaching for the phone. They'll be back, won't they? Yes, James said, returning to his maps. With more of them next time. Sarah brought him a fresh cup of coffee, her hands still shaking slightly. What are we going to do? James looked up at her, his expression softening. We're going to show them that they picked the wrong rest stop, the wrong community, and definitely the wrong veteran to mess with. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As night settled in, James remained at his spot at the counter, planning his next moves. He knew the Steel Vipers would return, probably the next night with reinforcements. They couldn't afford to let his challenge go unanswered. It would undermine their attempts to establish territory. But that's exactly what he was counting on. Sometimes the best way to stop a threat wasn't to run from it or to fight it head-on, but to draw it out into the open where it could be dealt with properly. He pulled out his phone and began making calls to other drivers he knew, veterans like himself who understood the importance of standing together. By the time the Steel Vipers returned, they'd find out that Crosswind Junction wasn't just another rest stop. It was a line in the sand that James Davidson and his community weren't going to let them cross. Dawn broke over Crosswind Junction rest stop, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. James had spent the night making calls, reaching out to his network of veteran truckers. Now, sitting at his usual spot at the counter, he watched as familiar faces began filtering in. Linda worked the morning shift herself, pouring coffee for the growing crowd of truckers. The morning regulars mixed with new faces, creating an atmosphere of quiet readiness. Never seen it this busy this early, Sarah remarked, tying her apron as she started her shift. James nodded, scanning the room. Big Steve Johnson, a former Army Ranger turned trucker, sat nearby nursing his coffee. 3 tables over, Michael Doc Wilson, who'd served as a combat medic, was deep in conversation with 2 other drivers. None of them were here by accident. Friends of yours? Linda asked quietly as she refilled James's cup. Let's just say we share some common interests, James replied, particularly in keeping places like this safe. The bell above the door chimed as Sheriff Tom Cooper walked in. He was still in his early 40s, but the job had added years to his face. He made his way directly to James, settling onto the adjacent stool. Heard we had some unwelcome visitors last night, Tom said, accepting the coffee Linda offered. James turned slightly. Steel Vipers. 2 of them for now, but there'll be more. Yeah, I know about them. They've been moving up from Texas, taking over truck stops, using them as distribution points for their drug operation. Had 3 stops shut down in the last month alone due to drug activity. Figured as much. James took a measured sip of coffee. Their patch design includes some cartel symbols I recognized from my time in Force Recon. They're not just small-time criminals. Tom's eyebrows raised slightly. Force Recon? All this time I thought you were just another trucker. James allowed himself a small smile. Still am. But before that, I spent some time with Joint Task Force North working counter-narcotics operations. Saw groups like the Steel Vipers turn quiet communities into war zones. And now they're here. Tom sighed heavily. I've got 2 deputies total, James. If they come in force, they will, James interrupted, but they won't expect what's waiting for them. The conversation halted as the rumble of motorcycles filled the parking lot. Not just 2 this time. 6 bikes pulled in, their chrome gleaming in the morning sun. Drake led the pack with Razor close behind. The other 4 riders were new faces, each wearing the Steel Vipers colors. Inside the diner, the atmosphere shifted. The regular customers tensed, but the truckers James had called in remained notably calm. Big Steve casually adjusted his position, giving himself a clear line to the door. Doc Wilson stretched, his movements deliberate as he created space around his table. The bikers entered as a group, their boots heavy on the linoleum floor. Drake's eyes narrowed as he took in the crowd, obviously not expecting so many people this early. Well, look who's still here, Drake sneered, spotting James. His confidence wavered slightly as he noticed Sheriff Cooper, but he pressed on. Brought some friends this time. Thought we should continue our conversation about the new management situation. James turned slowly on his stool, his movements unhurried. Nothing's changed since last night. This isn't your territory, and it's not going to be. One of the new bikers, a hulking man with a shaved head, stepped forward. You don't get to make that call, old man. Stand down, Brick, Drake warned, studying the room more carefully now. Something about the trucker's calm demeanor had caught his attention. We're just here to talk business, Drake continued, though his tone carried less certainty than before. No one needs to get hurt. No, James said firmly. You're here to establish a drug distribution point, same pattern you've used at other stops down south. Intimidation first, then take over the legitimate business. Use it as a front for moving product. Snake's hand drifted toward his jacket, but before he could make a move, Big Steve's voice cut through the tension. I wouldn't, Steve said calmly. Not unless you want to find out how many combat veterans are in this room right now. Drake's eyes darted around, really seeing the other truckers for the first time. He recognized the way they carried themselves, the disciplined stillness in their postures. These weren't ordinary drivers. These were trained fighters trying to look like ordinary drivers. You think bringing in a few other old-timers changes anything? Drake's voice carried less conviction now. This is happening whether you like it or not. James stood slowly, his movement drawing all eyes. Let me be very clear. I know your operation. I know your supply lines. I spent 20 years tracking and shutting down organizations like yours. You're not the first to try this, and you won't be the last. But right here, right now, you've got a choice. That right? Drake's hand twitched near his vest. And what choice is that? Leave. Find somewhere else to peddle your drugs. Because if you push this, if you really want to make Crosswind Junction your battleground, you're not just taking on me or these people in here. You're taking on an entire community of veterans who've spent their lives dealing with threats bigger than you." The diner had fallen completely silent. Even the regular customers seemed to hold their breath, watching the standoff unfold. Sheriff Cooper remained seated but alert, his hand casually resting near his holster. Brick took another step forward, but Drake grabbed his arm. Something in James's words, or maybe in the steady gazes of the truckers around the room, had given him pause. "This is your territory, huh?" Drake's voice dripped with sarcasm, but there was uncertainty beneath it. "No," James replied. "It's everyone's territory. That's what you don't understand. We're not claiming it, we're protecting it." Snake spat on the floor. Big words from an old man. "Not words," James corrected him. "Promise. You want to test us? Go ahead. But remember, whatever happens next, you chose it." Drake studied James for a long moment, then looked around the room once more. The odds had shifted dramatically since last night, and he knew it. Finally, he jerked his head toward the door. "Let's go," he ordered his crew. "Plenty of other stops on this highway." As the bikers filed out, Drake turned back. "This isn't over." "Yes," James said quietly. "It is. You just don't know it yet." The roar of motorcycles filled the air as the Steel Vipers departed. Inside, the tension slowly bled out of the room. Linda let out a long breath she'd been holding, while Sarah managed a shaky smile. Sheriff Cooper stood, placing a hand on James's shoulder. "They'll be back, with more numbers next time." "I know," James nodded. "That's what I'm counting on. Time to show them what happens when they target the wrong veteran at the wrong rest stop." As morning turned to day, James's allies began organizing, each bringing something different to the defense of their community. The Steel Vipers thought they were dealing with just one veteran, but they were about to learn a hard lesson about the strength of a community united against a common threat. The afternoon sun beat down on Crosswind Junction as James sat with Sheriff Cooper and a growing group of truckers in the far corner of the diner. Linda had closed off this section, giving them privacy to plan. Big Steve spread out a map of the local highways on the table, marking known Steel Viper sightings with red dots. "They've hit every major stop from Houston up through Oklahoma City," Steve explained, his thick finger tracing the pattern. "Always the same method: intimidation, then takeover, then the drugs start flowing." Doc Wilson leaned forward, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "According to my contacts, they've got at least 30 full members, maybe more prospects. They're not just some random gang, they're organized." James nodded, studying the map. "They use the truck stops as distribution hubs. Truckers on their payroll pick up shipments, move them across state lines. The stops provide cover and legitimate business front. And we're right in the middle of their planned expansion," Sheriff Cooper added, pointing to their location. "Perfect spot to control distribution along 3 major highways." Sarah approached with fresh coffee, her steps hesitant. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you should know." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "2 guys on bikes have been circling the lot for the past hour. They're not Steel Vipers, no colors, but they're definitely watching the place." James exchanged looks with Cooper. "Scouts," they said simultaneously. "They're studying our patterns," James continued, "trying to figure out our weaknesses when we're most vulnerable." Big Steve cracked his knuckles. "Let's go show them what we think about spies." "No," James said firmly. "Let them watch. Let them think they're getting good intelligence." He turned to Cooper. "Tom, how many of your former deputies would be willing to come back for temporary duty?" Cooper straightened. "Most of them, I'd guess. Budget cuts forced us to downsize, but they're still loyal. Why?" "Because we're going to need eyes everywhere," James explained, pointing to several spots on the map. "Not just here, but along all their likely approach routes. They'll come in force next time. Try to overwhelm us quickly. We need to be ready." A new voice joined the conversation. "Maybe I can help with that." Everyone turned to see Carl Martinez, a local mechanic and regular at the truck stop, approaching their table. I served with the Army Corps of Engineers, Carl continued. Got some ideas about how to control access to the lot, if you're interested. James gestured for him to join them. We're interested in everything right now. As they talked, more people began drifting over. A retired school teacher who'd served in military intelligence, a young waitress whose brother was currently deployed overseas, a local farmer who'd been in the National Guard. Each brought something to the table: information, skills, resources. Linda watched from behind the counter, amazed at how quickly her quiet truck stop had transformed into what looked like a military command center. She caught James's eye and nodded, determination replacing her earlier fear. The afternoon wore on as plans were made and roles assigned. James kept one eye on the window, watching the scouts make their passes. Let them look, he thought. Let them think they're seeing everything. Around sunset, Sarah rushed in from taking out trash. They're back. Drake and Razor. Got about 10 bikes with them this time. James stood calmly. Everybody remember what we discussed. No one acts alone. No one takes unnecessary risks. The bikers roared into the lot, their increased numbers a clear attempt at intimidation. This time they didn't all come inside. Drake entered with just Razor and 2 others, leaving the rest to circle the building menacingly on their bikes. Nice little war council you got going here, Drake called out, eyeing the gathered group. Planning something special for us? James stepped forward, positioning himself between the bikers and the others. Just having coffee with friends. You should try it sometime. Having friends. Snake snarled, but Drake held up a hand to stop him. You know, I've been asking around about you. Marcus Davidson, Force Recon, Counter-Narcotics Operations, Distinguished Service Cross recipient. Quite a resume. If you've learned that much, then you know what happens next. What happens is you back off. Drake's voice hardened. This isn't the military and you're not in charge here. This is business. No, James corrected him. This is community, something you wouldn't understand. Drake's eyes narrowed. Community won't stop what's coming. You've made this personal now. Whatever happens next, remember you chose this. Funny, James said. I was about to say the same thing to you. The tension in the room was electric. Both sides knew this was the last conversation before things got serious. Sheriff Cooper moved slightly, making his presence known but maintaining his distance. Last chance, Drake offered, though his tone suggested he knew the answer. Step aside. Let business happen. Nobody needs to get hurt. James didn't move. You're right. Nobody needs to get hurt. That's why you're going to take your people and leave. Find another road for your drugs, another territory to terrorize. Or what? Snake challenged. Or you'll find out exactly what happens when you target the wrong veteran at the wrong rest stop. Drake studied James for a long moment, then turned to leave. At the door he paused. War it is then. Hope you're ready for what that means. After they roared away, Cooper approached James. They'll hit us hard next time. No more warnings, no more talks. James nodded. Good. Let them come in force. The bigger the show they make, the more evidence we'll have when we take them down. The group returned to their planning, but now there was a new urgency to their preparations. The Steel Vipers had shown their hand. Next time wouldn't be about intimidation. It would be about conquest. As night fell, James watched more community members arrive, each bringing something to contribute to the defense of their rest stop. The Steel Vipers thought they were dealing with just one veteran, but they were about to learn a hard lesson about the strength of a community united against a common threat. You really think we can stop them? Sarah asked quietly as she cleared away coffee cups. James smiled slightly. Stop them? No. We're going to do much more than that. We're going to end them. The parking lot lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the pavement. Somewhere out there, the Steel Vipers were preparing for war. But here at Crosswind Junction, a different kind of army was forming. One built on brotherhood, community, and the unshakable determination of those who had sworn to protect others. The battle for Crosswind Junction rest stop was about to begin, and James Davidson was making sure they'd be ready when it did. Night had fallen at Crosswind Junction rest stop, but the parking lot blazed with light. James stood at the window watching Carl Martinez and his crew finishing the installation of additional floodlights. They'd spent the day making subtle but significant changes to the lot's layout. Concrete barriers positioned to control access, security cameras mounted at key points, clear lines of sight established. "Your old counter-narcotics experience showing through," Sheriff Cooper observed, joining James at the window. "Creating a controlled approach," James nodded. "Take away their ability to surround us. Force them to come in where we want them." The radio at Cooper's hip crackled. "Sheriff, this is Deputy Wilson. Got about 20 bikes gathering at the old mill, 5 miles south. Looks like they're gearing up for something." "Copy that," Cooper responded. "Keep your distance. Maintain observation." Inside the diner, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Big Steve and Doc Wilson had positioned themselves near the entrance, while other veteran truckers were scattered strategically throughout the space. Linda had sent most of her regular staff home, keeping only those who insisted on staying to help. "You sure about this?" Linda asked James, her voice low. "We could just call in the state police, shut the place down for a few days." "That's what they want," James replied. "Force you to close, then move in when you're vulnerable. No, we face them here, now, on our terms." The distant rumble of motorcycles grew steadily louder. James checked his watch, just past midnight. "Right on schedule," he muttered. Sarah, who had refused to leave despite James's protests, moved closer to Linda behind the counter. "How many do you think there are?" Before James could answer, the sound of engines filled the air as bikes began pouring into the lot. They came in waves. First a group of 10, then another, then more, until nearly 30 motorcycles circled the building, their riders revving engines in an intimidating display. Drake led the main group through the front door with Razor and Brick flanking him. The other Steel Vipers filed in behind them, filling the diner with the smell of leather and exhaust. Some carried chains, others had bats poorly concealed under their vests. "Quite a welcoming committee," Drake called out, surveying the room. "But it won't make any difference." James stepped forward, his calm presence a stark contrast to the bikers' aggressive energy. "Last chance to walk away." Drake laughed, the sound echoed by his crew. "Walk away? Look around, old man. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. This stop is ours now." "Numbers don't win fights," James replied evenly. "You should know that." "No," Razor sneered, pulling out a chain. "Let's test that theory." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Razor swung the chain, but James was already moving. Years of combat training took over as he stepped inside Razor's reach, redirecting the chain's momentum while simultaneously sweeping the biker's legs. Razor hit the ground hard, the chain clattering away. The room erupted into chaos. Brick charged forward only to be met by Big Steve's massive fist. Doc Wilson and 2 other truckers engaged the nearest bikers, their movements coordinated and precise. These weren't random brawlers. These were trained fighters working together. Drake pulled a knife, but before he could use it, Sheriff Cooper's voice cut through the mayhem. "I wouldn't." The sheriff stood calmly, his weapon drawn. "Unless you want to add assault with a deadly weapon to your charges." More bikers tried to push forward but found themselves facing an organized defense. The veterans James had gathered moved with military precision, controlling space and protecting the civilians. Even Sarah and Linda had roles to play, staying safely behind the counter while recording everything on their phones. Outside, sirens wailed as Cooper's deputies approached, backed by state police who'd been stationed nearby. The Steel Vipers found themselves caught in a carefully staged trap, their superior numbers meaningless in the confined space. "You planned this," Drake spat, realizing too late what James had done. "Used us." James nodded slightly. "Like I said, numbers don't win fights. Strategy does." The fight was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Several bikers were down, others were backing away, and the sound of approaching sirens was getting louder. Drake looked around wildly, seeing his advantage evaporating. "This isn't over," he snarled, backing toward the door. "Actually, it is," Cooper said. "We've got squad cars blocking both ends of the highway. Nobody's leaving until we sort this out." Drake's face twisted with rage. "You think this stops anything? We've got people you don't even know about, operations you can't touch." James smiled slightly. "Thank you for confirming that. State police will be very interested in that admission." The realization of what had happened finally dawned on Drake's face. This hadn't just been about defending the truck stop. It was a staged operation to get the Steel Vipers to incriminate themselves, to gather evidence of their larger criminal enterprise. "You son of a..." Drake lunged at James but never completed his move. James sidestepped, used Drake's momentum against him, and had him face down on the floor in seconds, arm locked behind his back. "Like I said," James spoke quietly, holding Drake down, "you picked the wrong veteran to mess with." State police flooded into the diner, quickly taking control of the situation. The Steel Vipers, their bravado shattered, were disarmed and cuffed. Evidence was collected, statements taken, and the first phase of James's plan was complete. "This was never about just defending the truck stop, was it?" Cooper asked as they watched the bikers being loaded into police vehicles. James shook his head. "Had to draw them out, get them to show their hand. Now we've got probable cause for a larger investigation into their whole operation." Linda approached, surveying the minimal damage to her diner. "So it's over?" "No," James replied, watching the last of the Steel Vipers being taken away. "This was just the beginning. Now we go after their entire organization." He paused, his expression hardening. "But they won't be bothering Crosswind Junction again." The parking lot gradually cleared, the roar of motorcycles replaced by the quiet hum of the rest stop's normal operation. Sarah began cleaning up the minor mess from the scuffle, while Big Steve and the others helped reset the dining room. James returned to his usual spot at the counter, accepting a fresh cup of coffee from Linda. The night's events had been carefully orchestrated, a tactical operation disguised as a simple defense of territory. The Steel Vipers had expected to find an old veteran trying to play hero. Instead, they'd run headfirst into a carefully laid trap sprung by a man who'd spent his life taking down bigger and more dangerous organizations. "You knew they'd come in force," Cooper said, joining James at the counter. "Knew they'd try to overwhelm us with numbers," James nodded. "People like that are predictable. They only know one way to solve problems, with force. Makes them easy to manipulate if you understand their psychology." The first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon. Crosswind Junction had survived its first major battle, but everyone knew the war was far from over. Somewhere out there, the rest of the Steel Vipers organization was about to learn that their attempt to take over a simple rest stop had led them into a fight they couldn't win. Morning light streamed through the windows of Sheriff Cooper's office as James studied the evidence board they'd assembled. Photos of arrested Steel Vipers members covered one section, while a map showing suspected drug routes dominated another. Deputy Wilson was updating the board with information from the night's arrests. "Drake's not talking," Cooper said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. "But Razor's another story. Amazing what a few hours in lockup will do to a man's loyalty." "What's he giving us?" James accepted the coffee. "Names, dates, locations. Seems the Steel Vipers are just the muscle for a larger operation. They're working with a Mexican cartel, using truck stops as distribution points across 5 states." "Just like I thought," James nodded. "The gang provides local control, the cartel provides product and protection. Classic structure. I saw dozens of times in Force Recon." Deputy Wilson pinned another photo to the board. "Razor mentioned a name. Diego Ramirez. Says he's the cartel connection." James straightened, his expression hardening. "Ramirez? You're sure?" "Yeah, why?" "Last operation I ran before retiring," James explained. "We nearly caught him moving product across the border, but he slipped away. Lost 2 good men in that firefight." The office door opened as Linda walked in carrying a box of donuts. "Thought you boys could use breakfast." She set the box down, then moved to study the evidence board. So these Steel Vipers, they're bigger than we thought? Much bigger, Cooper confirmed. Your rest stop was just the latest target in a major expansion plan. They've been systematically taking over transportation hubs, building a distribution network. James's phone buzzed. He checked the message, then looked up grimly. Just heard from my contact in Texas. Steel Viper's leadership is calling an emergency meeting. Our little operation last night got their attention. Good, Cooper said. Maybe they'll back off. No, James shook his head. They can't afford to. We've disrupted their supply line, embarrassed them publicly. They'll hit back hard. As if confirming his words, Sarah burst into the office, her face pale. You need to see this! They followed her outside. Across the street from the sheriff's office, a Steel Viper's prospect was spray painting a message on the wall. War is coming. Before anyone could move, 3 bikes roared past, their riders throwing something. Glass shattered as Molotov cocktails exploded against the pavement, sending flames spreading across the street. Everyone back! James shouted, pulling Sarah to safety as Cooper called for fire response. The bikes disappeared around the corner, leaving chaos in their wake. As emergency crews arrived to handle the fire, James studied the graffiti message. The paint was still wet, dripping down the wall like blood. They're escalating, Cooper observed, joining him. Making it personal. It already was personal, James replied. Now they're just showing their hand. Back at Crosswind Junction, Big Steve and the other veterans had transformed the rest stop into a fortress. Security cameras monitored every approach, and concrete barriers controlled access to the lot. Regular customers still came and went, but everyone was watched, evaluated. Got movement on the South Road, Doc Wilson reported through the radio. He was set up in an observation post with a clear view of approaching traffic. 3 bikes, just watching for now. James acknowledged the report, then turned to Cooper. They're probing, looking for weaknesses. The attack downtown was just to show they can hit us anywhere. I can request state police support, Cooper offered. Not yet. Let them think they've got us rattled. Meanwhile, James pulled out his phone, showing Cooper a series of messages. My old contacts are coming through, getting intel on Steel Viper's operations across the region. Linda, who had been listening nearby, approached. What did they want, really? Control, James explained. The cartel needs reliable distribution routes. The Steel Vipers provide that by controlling key transport hubs. But it's not just about drugs, it's about power. They can't let a small rest stop successfully resist them. Word would spread, others might get ideas. The radio crackled again. More bikes approaching from the east. Looks like they're photographing the lot. James moved to the window, watching the bikers make slow passes. Let them look. They won't see what matters. Throughout the day, more reports came in. Steel Vipers members were gathering in small groups throughout the region. Local businesses reported intimidation attempts. The gang was flexing its muscles, trying to show strength after the previous night's defeat. By evening, the tension was palpable. Sarah jumped at every motorcycle sound, while Linda kept checking the security cameras. Even the veteran truckers seemed on edge, knowing that somewhere out there, the Steel Vipers were planning their revenge. James sat at his usual spot, apparently relaxed but missing nothing. His phone buzzed with another message, this one from an old military contact. The contents made him smile grimly. What is it? Cooper asked, noticing James's expression. Remember how Razor mentioned Diego Ramirez? Just got confirmation he's personally coming up from Mexico to handle this situation. That's bad, right? Actually, James said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. It's exactly what we want. The Steel Vipers are the local muscle, but Ramirez is the real target. If we can catch him here, we can take down the entire operation. So the gang's ego won't let them back down, Cooper started. And Ramirez can't afford to lose this territory, James finished. They'll come at us with everything they have. And that's good. That's perfect, because this time we'll be ready for all of them. As night fell over Crosswind Junction, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. More bikes were spotted circling the area, their riders more aggressive now. Everyone knew that the Steel Viper's response was coming, and it would be violent. But looking around the rest stop, James saw not fear but determination. The community had come together, found its strength. What the Steel Vipers and their cartel backers didn't understand was that they weren't just fighting one veteran. They were fighting an entire community that had decided to take a stand. "War is coming," James said quietly, looking at the graffiti message visible from the window. But they have no idea what kind of war they've started. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Crosswind Junction as James met with a group of trusted allies in the back office. The room had been transformed into an impromptu command center, with maps and surveillance photos covering every wall. Big Steve stood guard outside while Doc Wilson helped organize the latest intelligence. "Ramirez is definitely on the move," James explained, pointing to a series of photos. "Our contacts spotted him crossing the border yesterday. He's traveling with a small security detail, trying to stay under the radar." Sheriff Cooper leaned forward, studying the images. "How'd you get these so quickly?" "Old friends from Joint Task Force North. They've been watching Ramirez for years, waiting for him to make a mistake." James tapped one photo showing Ramirez meeting with Steel Viper's leaders. "This is his mistake." Sarah knocked and entered with fresh coffee, her eyes widening at the wall of evidence. "Is that him? The cartel guy?" James nodded. "Diego Ramirez. Started as a small-time enforcer, worked his way up. Now he controls drug distribution across 3 states. The Steel Vipers are just his latest attempt to expand territory." "And he's coming here?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly. "He has to," Cooper interjected. "We've disrupted his operation, embarrassed his people. In his world, that demands a personal response." The radio crackled with Big Steve's voice. "Heads up. Got 2 SUVs with Texas plates doing slow passes of the lot. Don't recognize the drivers." James moved to the window, watching the black vehicles cruise past. "Advance team. They're scouting for Ramirez, making sure it's safe for him to come in." Linda entered the office, her face tight with concern. "Just got a call from Mike at the Highway 40 rest stop. Steel Vipers showed up this morning, threatened to burn the place down if he didn't close. They're isolating us," James explained, "trying to cut off support from other stops in the area. Classic cartel tactic." Cooper's phone buzzed. He checked it, then looked up grimly. "State police just found one of my deputies beaten up behind the gas station. Left him with a message. Either we back off, or more people get hurt." James's expression hardened. "They're escalating, trying to force us to make a mistake." He turned to the group. "This is where it gets dangerous. They'll keep pushing, keep hurting people until we either give in or react emotionally." "So what do we do?" Sarah asked. "We stick to the plan. Let them think they're in control." Meanwhile, James pulled out his phone, showing them a series of text messages. "My contacts have been tracking Steel Viper's movement. They're gathering forces, bringing in members from other chapters. But that's not the important part." He pointed to a particular message. "Ramirez isn't just coming to deal with us. He's bringing a major shipment with him, wants to demonstrate that nothing can stop his operation." Cooper straightened. "You're sure about this?" "Positive. He's arrogant, believes his own legend. The idea that a small rest stop could resist him. He needs to prove his power." Doc Wilson, who had been quietly studying the evidence wall, spoke up. "If he's bringing product with him, that means federal jurisdiction." "DEA, FBI, all of it," James finished. "But we have to catch him in the act. If he just shows up to intimidate us, we've got nothing." The radio crackled again. "More bikes coming in from the south. Looks like they're setting up observation posts." James nodded. "They'll watch us for a while, try to learn our patterns. Let them. Everything they see is what we want them to see." Linda crossed her arms. "What about my customers, my staff? I can't put them at risk." "Already handled," James assured her. "When this goes down, legitimate customers will be cleared out. We're coordinating with state police for an evacuation order. Make it look like we're backing down." "And then?" Sarah asked. and then we spring the trap. But first, James turned to Cooper. We need to send a message of our own. Let them know that hurting your deputy was a mistake. Cooper's eyes narrowed. What kind of message? The kind that makes them angry, makes them sloppy. Ramirez is too smart, too controlled. We need the Steel Vipers to push him into action before he's ready. As they discussed strategy, the black SUVs made another pass of the rest stop. Inside one, a man spoke quietly into a phone, reporting their observations to someone higher up the chain. They didn't realize that every move they made was being photographed, documented, added to the growing pile of evidence. Night began to fall, and with it came more motorcycle activity around Crosswind Junction. The Steel Vipers were becoming bolder, their presence more obvious. They wanted everyone to feel the pressure, to understand that resistance was futile. But in the back office, James and his allies continued planning. The walls filled with more photos, more connections. The picture of Ramirez's operation grew clearer with each passing hour. Remember, James told the group as they prepared to implement the next phase of their plan, everything that happens in the next few days has to look natural. They need to believe they're in control, that their intimidation is working. And if something goes wrong? Sarah asked. James's expression was grim. Then we shift to contingency plans. But nothing goes wrong because we're not just fighting for a rest stop anymore. We're fighting for every community these people have terrorized. As the meeting broke up, James remained in the office, studying the photos of Ramirez. 20 years ago, he'd nearly caught him at the border. Now fate had given him another chance. But this time, he had something better than military backing. He had a community united against a common enemy. The radio crackled one more time. More bikes coming in. Looks like they're getting ready for something big. Good, James said quietly. So are we. The first attack came just before midnight. A dozen Steel Vipers roared into the nearly empty parking lot of Crosswind Junction, their bikes moving in practiced formation. Security cameras tracked their approach as James and his team watched from inside. Here we go, James said quietly, noting how the bikers positioned themselves strategically around the building. First wave. Drake wasn't among them. He was still in custody, but Brick led the group. They dismounted as one, pulling out chains, bats, and other weapons. Brick approached the main entrance, his face twisted in a sneer. Come on out, old man, he shouted. Time to finish what we started. Inside, Linda clutched her baseball bat while Sarah stayed behind the counter, phone recording everything. Big Steve and Doc Wilson flanked the entrance while other veteran truckers maintained defensive positions throughout the diner. Remember, James told everyone, let them make the first move. Everything has to be clearly self-defense. The sound of breaking glass shattered the tension as Bricks came through the windows. Brick's voice carried over the chaos. This is what happens when you mess with the Steel Vipers. More bikers appeared from the darkness, bringing the total to around 20. They began systematically attacking the building, breaking windows and spray painting threats on the walls. Hold position, James ordered, as some of the truckers moved to respond. Not yet. Sheriff Cooper's voice crackled over the radio. In position. State police are 2 minutes out. You sure about this? James asked. Positive. Let them commit fully to the attack. Snake, growing frustrated by the lack of response, kicked in the front door. What's wrong, hero? Not so tough without your cop friends around? Several bikers rushed forward, led by Snake. They made it 3 steps into the diner before the trap was sprung. Lights suddenly blazed from concealed positions, temporarily blinding the attackers. The veteran truckers moved with military precision, neutralizing threats before they could react. Big Steve caught Snake with a perfect tackle, driving him into the floor. Doc Wilson and 2 others handled his immediate backup. The remaining bikers found themselves facing an organized defense they hadn't expected. Outside, police sirens wailed as state troopers moved in, blocking escape routes that had been carefully pre-planned. Drop your weapons! Cooper's voice boomed through a megaphone. The building is surrounded! Some bikers tried to run, only to find their bikes mysteriously disabled. Carl Martinez's contribution to the plan. Others surrendered immediately, realizing they were hopelessly outmatched. "You don't know what you've started?" Brick spat blood and curses. "When Ramirez gets here." "That's exactly what we wanted to hear," James said, holding up a phone that had been recording everything. A clear connection between the Steel Vipers and Ramirez, caught on multiple devices, admissible in court. The fight was over in minutes, ending with most of the Steel Vipers in custody. Property damage was significant but controlled, exactly as James had planned. "You set this up," Snake realized as state troopers cuffed him. "Used us to get evidence." "You made it easy," James replied. "People like you always react the same way, with force and threats. Predictable." As the arrested bikers were loaded into transport vehicles, Cooper joined James inside. "That's twice we've caught them. They'll be even more desperate now." "Good," James nodded, "because this was just the warm-up. The real target is still coming." "With more people," Sarah said quietly, still recording with her phone. "Count on it," James agreed. "But now we've got solid evidence linking them to Ramirez. That changes everything." The radio crackled with an urgent message from one of their lookouts. "Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. High-end SUVs with armed escorts." James moved to the window, watching the approaching convoy. "Right on schedule. Ramirez wants to see the situation for himself." 4 black SUVs rolled past slowly, their windows tinted but not enough to hide the occupants completely. In the second vehicle, a man in an expensive suit was just visible, studying the scene. "That's him," James said quietly. "Diego Ramirez himself, coming to inspect his damaged operation." The convoy didn't stop, but the message was clear. The real battle was about to begin. Ramirez wasn't a common criminal like the Steel Vipers. He was calculating, patient, and completely ruthless. "What now?" Cooper asked as the SUVs disappeared into the night. "Now we wait," James replied. "He'll want to re-establish control quickly, prove that no one can resist his organization. When he makes his move," James smiled grimly, "we'll be ready." Inside the diner, the cleanup began. Windows were boarded up, glass swept away, evidence carefully preserved. There was a new tension in the air. Everyone knew that Ramirez's appearance meant the conflict was escalating beyond simple gang violence. "You've dealt with him before," Linda said to James. "In the Marines, what can we expect?" "He'll be subtle at first," James explained, checking his phone for updates from his network of contacts. "Offer money, try to buy us off. When that fails, he'll threaten families, try to divide us. Only then will he resort to violence, but when he does, it'll be overwhelming." Sarah shuddered. "Can we really stand up to someone like that?" James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We already are. Everything that's happened, the fights, the arrests, the property damage, it's all building a case. Not just against the Steel Vipers, but against Ramirez's entire operation." The night grew quiet again, but no one relaxed. More bikes could be heard in the distance, circling, watching. The Steel Vipers weren't finished, and now they had cartel backing to worry about. "Get some rest," James told the group. "Tomorrow we show them what happens when they bring a cartel war to our doorstep." Dawn broke over Crosswind Junction rest stop, revealing the full extent of last night's damage. Boarded windows and spray-painted threats stood as stark reminders of the Steel Vipers' attack. But inside, James was focused on a different threat. He sat with Sheriff Cooper and 2 DEA agents who'd arrived early that morning, reviewing intelligence on Ramirez's operation. "Our sources confirm he's setting up a major distribution hub," Agent Lisa Torres explained, spreading photos across the table. "The Steel Vipers were just phase 1. Intimidate local businesses, establish control of transport routes. Phase 2 is the actual drug pipeline." James studied a surveillance photo showing Ramirez meeting with other cartel leaders. "He's expanding aggressively. This isn't just about one rest stop anymore." "No," Agent Mike Phillips agreed, pointing to a map marked with suspicious activity. "He's building a network. Every truck stop, Every rest area from Texas to Kansas is a potential distribution point. Conservative estimate puts the operation's value at $500 million annually. Cooper whistled low. No wonder he came personally to handle this situation. It's not just about money, James interjected. Ramirez has a reputation to maintain. If word gets out that a small rest stop successfully resisted him, others might try the same. We can't let that happen, Torres finished. This might be our best chance to catch him. The meeting was interrupted by Big Steve's urgent entry. Got movement on the South Road. 3 black SUVs, same ones as last night. Everyone moved to the window, watching the vehicles approach. This time they didn't just drive past. The convoy pulled into the lot, parking in a defensive formation. Men in expensive suits emerged, their bulges under their jackets clearly indicating weapons. "Here we go," James said quietly. "Remember, let them make the first move." Ramirez stepped out last, his designer suit and confident stride marking him as the leader. He was shorter than James expected, but carried himself with the authority of someone used to absolute power. The cartel leader entered Crosswind Junction flanked by 4 guards. He surveyed the damage from last night's attack, then focused on James with a practiced smile. "Mr. Davidson," Ramirez said smoothly, "I believe we have some business to discuss." James stood calmly, positioning himself between Ramirez and the others. "Nothing to discuss. This isn't your territory." Ramirez's smile didn't waver. "Everything is my territory, Mr. Davidson. The only question is whether the transition will be profitable for everyone or," he gestured to the damaged windows, "unpleasant. The only transition happening here is you going to prison," Cooper stated firmly. One of Ramirez's guards reached inside his jacket, but the cartel leader held up a hand. "Please, we're all businessmen here. Violence should be our last resort." He turned back to James. "I'm prepared to offer you $2 million cash, untraceable. Walk away, forget what you've seen." James didn't blink. "Not interested?" $3 million then, plus monthly payments to ensure your continued cooperation." The answer is still no. Ramirez's smile finally faded. "You're making a very dangerous mistake. Ask yourself, is this little rest stop worth dying for?" "You should ask yourself the same question," James replied evenly. "Is it worth losing everything for?" The cartel leader studied James more carefully now. "You know, I looked into your military record. Impressive work in Joint Task Force North. You caused my organization significant problems. And I'm about to cause more." Ramirez's expression hardened. "Let me be clear. I own this territory now. The Steel Vipers work for me. Local law enforcement works for me. Even your precious state police have commanders on my payroll. You're fighting a losing battle." "Maybe," James agreed. "But it's a battle I'm going to fight anyway." Everyone has a price, Mr. Davidson. Everyone has something they care about more than principles. Your friend Linda's daughter in college in California, Sarah's sick mother in Arizona, Sheriff Cooper's son on the police force in Oklahoma City. Would be a shame if anything happened to them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. James took a step forward, his voice deadly quiet. "Threatening families, that's a line you don't want to cross." "I cross whatever lines I choose," Ramirez replied coldly. "You have 24 hours to reconsider my offer. After that," he smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We do this the hard way." As Ramirez turned to leave, James called after him. "You're not the first cartel leader I've taken down. Won't be the last." The cartel leader paused at the door. "No, Mr. Davidson, I'm not like the others you faced. They were businessmen playing at being soldiers. I'm a soldier playing at being a businessman. Remember that." After the convoy departed, Cooper turned to James. He wasn't bluffing about those threats. "No, he wasn't," James agreed grimly. "Agent Torres, how quickly can we get protective details on those families?" "Already done," she replied. "We've had teams in place since we identified Ramirez's presence. But he's right about one thing. He's got people everywhere. We can't trust normal channels." James nodded. Then we trust our people. Doc, get on the radio. Call in every veteran trucker who can make it. Steve, contact your friends in the Mechanics Association. We need eyes everywhere. People we know aren't on Ramirez's payroll. What's he going to do? Sarah asked, her voice shaking slightly. First, he'll isolate us, James explained. Cut off supplies, communications, support. Then he'll start applying pressure, accidents, vandalism, anonymous threats. Finally, when he thinks we're weakened and scared, he'll hit us with everything he has. And we're going to let him? Linda demanded. We're going to encourage him. Every step of his plan needs to look like it's working. He has to believe we're breaking down, turning against each other. That's when he'll get sloppy. Agent Phillips frowned. That's a dangerous game, Marcus. These aren't just street thugs like the Steel Vipers. These are professional killers. I know exactly what they are, James replied. That's why this has to end here. Ramirez isn't just threatening us. He's threatening every community along his distribution route. If we don't stop him now, how many other families will he destroy? The rest of the day was spent preparing. Veterans arrived in a steady stream, each bringing skills and resources. Carl Martinez and his crew installed hidden cameras and sensors. Doc Wilson established a secure communication network. The rest stop was transformed into a fortress, but in ways that weren't immediately visible. As night fell, more Steel Vipers appeared, circling the property with increasing boldness. They were just the visible threat. Everyone knew Ramirez's professional killers were out there too, watching, waiting. 24 hours, Cooper mused, joining James at his usual spot at the counter. Think we're ready? James checked his phone, reading the latest updates from his network of contacts. We're ready. Question is, are they ready for what's coming? You really think this will work? Drawing them in, making them think they're winning? It has to work, James replied grimly. Because if it doesn't... He let the thought hang unfinished. The night grew darker, and the circling bikes grew bolder. Everyone could feel it, the calm before the storm. Ramirez had made his threat, set his deadline. Soon, very soon, all hell would break loose at Crosswind Junction rest stop. But this time, James and his allies weren't just defending a business. They were taking down a cartel, and every move had to be perfect. The pressure began mounting as soon as the sun rose. First came the whispered phone calls to Linda's suppliers, sudden cancellations, mysterious delivery problems. By mid-morning, fuel trucks were being turned away at highway checkpoints by police officers who just needed to verify some paperwork. James watched it all unfold from his usual spot, noting each move in Ramirez's campaign of isolation. Right on schedule, he muttered to Cooper. He's cutting off our supply lines first. Trying to starve us out? Sarah asked, overhearing as she refilled coffee cups. More than that, James explained. He's showing us how much control he has, how many people are on his payroll, every canceled delivery, every police stop. It's a message. The radio crackled with Big Steve's voice. Got more company. Steel Vipers setting up at both highway exits. They're turning away trucks, telling them Crosswind Junction is closed for health code violations. Cooper checked his phone. Just got word. State health inspector's on his way. Bet he finds all kinds of problems. Of course he will. James nodded. Ramirez is thorough. He'll use every legal channel he can before resorting to violence. Makes it harder to prove criminal intent.
Linda emerged from her office, face pale. Bank just called. There's a problem with our business loan. They're threatening to call in the full amount by end of week.
He's good, Agent Torres admitted, joining the group. Using legitimate pressure points, making it look like unrelated issues. Hard to prove coordination. James stood, gathering everyone around. This is just the start. Next will come the personal pressure, anonymous threats, minor accidents, anything to make us feel isolated and vulnerable. As if on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed. She checked it, hands trembling. Someone sent pictures of my mom. They've been following her. Mine too, Linda added, showing similar surveillance photos of her daughter. Message says we should think about our loved ones before it's too late. Cooper's radio squawked with reports of Steel Vipers gatherings at every rest stop within 50 miles. The gang was making sure everyone knew the price of supporting Crosswind Junction. He's trying to break our spirit, James explained. Make us feel completely alone against overwhelming odds. Doc Wilson entered with a laptop. Got something you need to see. He opened the screen, showing a live stream from a hidden camera. Steel Vipers members were systematically vandalizing cars in town, but only those belonging to people known to frequent Crosswind Junction. Sending a message to our customers, Cooper growled. Stay away or pay the price. James checked his watch. 14 hours until Ramirez's deadline. He'll keep escalating, make each hour feel longer than the last. The afternoon brought more pressure. A health inspector arrived, finding critical violations that would normally take weeks to discover. Tax auditors showed up at Linda's house. Sarah's mother called in tears. Someone had broken into her house but stolen nothing, just left evidence they could get to her anytime. We should call in the state police, Cooper suggested as reports of intimidation kept flowing in. Can't trust them, Agent Phillips reminded everyone. Not until we know who's clean and who's compromised. James gathered his core team in the back office. This is all following the cartel playbook. I've seen it before. They isolate, intimidate, and then offer a way out. Right now, everyone who supports us is paying a price. Soon, Ramirez will make another offer, probably through intermediaries. He'll promise that everything goes back to normal if we just step aside. And if we don't? Linda asked, her voice tight with worry. Then Phase 3 begins. Direct action. But he'll wait until he thinks we're broken, desperate for a solution. Big Steve's voice came through the radio. Got movement on the South Road. Looks like the whole Steel Vipers chapter heading this way. Everyone moved to the windows. A massive column of bikes approached, led by Brick, who'd made bail that morning. They didn't attack, just formed a circle around the rest stop, engines roaring in an intimidating display of force. Look at the patches, James pointed out. Multiple chapters. Ramirez has called in every Steel Vipers member in 3 states. The bikers maintained their circle, a constant reminder of the forces aligned against Crosswind Junction. Every few minutes, one would break formation to harass any customer trying to approach. As evening approached, Ramirez's black SUVs made another pass, driving slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone saw them. He's watching, Torres noted, measuring our reaction to all this pressure. Sarah, who'd been quiet most of the day, suddenly spoke up. My mom just called again, said a man visited her, very polite, well-dressed, offered to buy her house for twice its value if she could convince her daughter to be reasonable. Same with my daughter, Linda added. Full scholarship offer from a prestigious university, all expenses paid, just needs me to make the right decision. Cooper checked his phone. My son's police department is suddenly offering him a major promotion. All he has to do is talk some sense into his old man. Carrots and sticks, James nodded grimly. Ramirez is showing he can hurt us or help us. Our choice. Doc Wilson approached with new surveillance footage. Got more Steel Vipers setting up observation posts along all approach routes. They're documenting everyone who comes and goes. James studied the footage carefully. Preparing target lists. Anyone who still supports us becomes a target. Can't we do something? Sarah asked, her hands shaking as she poured coffee. Fight back somehow? We are fighting back, James replied. Every move they make, every threat, every bribe, it's all being documented. But we have to let them think they're winning. Agent Torres nodded in understanding. The more pressure they apply, the more evidence we gather. But it's risky. They could snap, decide to just eliminate us all. They won't, James said confidently. Ramirez is too careful for that. He wants to break us, not martyr us. A rest stop standing up to intimidation is one thing. A mass casualty event would bring too much heat. Carl Martinez entered with technical updates. Got all the new cameras in place. If anyone so much as sneezes within half a mile of here, we'll have it on video. Good, James replied.
Because the real show's about to start.
As if on cue, every phone in the room buzzed simultaneously. Each screen showed the same message: a generous cash offer followed by surveillance photos of loved ones going about their daily routines. The threat was clear: take the money or risk everything. Right on schedule, James said quietly. Final warning before the hammer falls. What do we do? Jenny asked, staring at the photos of her mother. James stood, addressing everyone. We do exactly what Ramirez expects. We look scared, we act desperate. We make him think his plan is working perfectly. And then? Linda demanded. And then we spring the trap we've been setting since this whole thing began. James smiled grimly. Ramirez thinks he's breaking us. What he doesn't realize is that every move he's made, every threat, every bribe, it's all evidence. When this is over, he won't just lose a rest stop. He'll lose everything. Cooper's radio crackled. Large gathering of bikes at the old mill. Looks like they're organizing for something big. How many? James asked. At least 50, and more arriving. James checked his watch. 8 hours until Ramirez's deadline. He'll make his move soon. Can't risk us changing our minds about his offer. What's the play? Big Steve asked. We give him what he wants, a target. Make him think we're cracking under the pressure. James turned to Linda. Call your daughter. Tell her you're thinking about taking the deal. Make it sound convincing. Linda's eyes widened in understanding. Let them think they're winning. Exactly. Sarah, same with your mother. Cooper, tell your son you might be ready to listen to reason. We need Ramirez to think his strategy is working. Agent Torres raised an eyebrow. Risky play. If they think we're about to fold, they might rush their timeline. Count on it, James replied. The more confident they get, the sloppier they'll be. And we need them sloppy. The radio crackled again. More vehicles arriving at the mill. Black SUVs this time. James moved to the window, studying the distant lights through binoculars. Ramirez is gathering his forces. He wants to be here personally when we break. Why? Sarah asked. Because he needs to see it. Needs to know that no one can resist him. His whole operation depends on fear, on people believing resistance is futile. Doc Wilson entered with more surveillance photos. Got movement at every truck stop within 50 miles. Steel Vipers are clearing them out, shutting them down. Cutting off our last possible allies, Cooper observed. No, James corrected. Creating witnesses. Every person they threaten, every business they shut down, they're all potential testimony later. The night grew darker as Ramirez's deadline approached. The circle of bikes around Crosswind Junction tightened, their headlights creating a ring of fire in the darkness. Inside, James's team continued their preparations, each person knowing their role and what was to come. You really think this will work? Linda asked quietly. It has to, James replied. Because if we don't stop them here, they'll keep spreading. More communities, more families living in fear. Sometimes you have to let the enemy think they're winning to deliver the killing blow. The radio came alive with Big Steve's voice. Multiple vehicles moving out from the mill. Looks like they're forming up for something big. Here we go, James said, checking his weapon one last time. Everyone remember, no matter what happens next, we have to make it look good. Ramirez needs to believe he's watching us break. The sound of engines grew louder as the force Ramirez had gathered began to move. The final confrontation was about to begin, but only one side knew the true stakes of the battle ahead. 6 hours before Ramirez's deadline, the power went out at Crosswind Junction. Emergency lights kicked in immediately. James had prepared for this, casting the rest stop in an eerie red glow. Outside, the circle of motorcycle headlights tightened, moving closer. Right on cue, James said, checking his watch. He's starting early, hoping to catch us off guard. Cooper's radio crackled with reports of Steel Vipers blocking every access road within 5 miles. Big Steve's voice cut through the chatter. SUVs approaching from the south. Looks like Ramirez is coming to oversee things personally. Inside the diner, James's veterans took their positions. They'd drilled for this, knew exactly what to expect. Linda and Sarah had been moved to the reinforced back office along with other civilians who'd refused to leave. "Remember," James addressed his team, "let them think they're in control. Everything has to look like it's falling apart." The convoy of black SUVs pulled into the lot, parking in a perfect defensive formation. Ramirez emerged from the central vehicle, still immaculate in his designer suit. His security detail spread out, professional and alert. "Last chance, Mr. Davidson," Ramirez called out as he approached the entrance. "I'm even willing to raise my offer, given how stubborn you've proven." James met him at the door. "Come to do your own dirty work this time?" "I come to resolve situations personally when they require it." Ramirez smiled coldly. "I respect worthy opponents enough to handle them myself." Behind Ramirez, more bikes arrived. Brick led a group of Steel Vipers through the parking lot, their numbers now well over 100. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. "You've put up an admirable fight," Ramirez continued. "Truly impressive. But surely you see the futility of your position now. You're isolated, outmanned, and out of options." As if to emphasize his point, a volley of rocks shattered the remaining windows. Glass rained down as the Steel Vipers cheered. "I give you credit," Ramirez said, brushing glass from his sleeve. "Most people break under half this pressure. But now it's time to be reasonable. Take the money, walk away, let business happen as it should." "Not going to happen." Ramirez's smile vanished. "Then you leave me no choice. I've tried to be civilized about this, but..." He gestured to his men. "Search the place. Find anything we can use." Professional cartel soldiers moved in, their weapons now clearly visible. They began a methodical sweep of the diner while Steel Vipers poured in behind them, swaggering and destructive. "You're making a mistake," James warned. "No, Mr. Davidson, the mistake was yours. You thought you could stand against me. I own this territory. I own the police. I own the politicians. Your little resistance ends tonight." Brick approached, grinning. "Want us to show the old man what happens to people who don't cooperate?" "Patience," Ramirez counseled. "First we make sure his friends understand the consequences of their loyalty." On cue, phones throughout the diner buzzed with new messages, more surveillance photos, more threats. This time they targeted not just families but friends, co-workers, anyone connected to Crosswind Junction. "Impressive network you have," James admitted. "Must have taken weeks to gather all that intelligence." "I am nothing if not thorough," Ramirez agreed. "Every person has pressure points. It's just a matter of finding them." The cartel soldiers continued their search, moving with practiced efficiency. Steel Vipers members swaggered through the space, knocking things over, making their dominance felt. "You know what happens next," Ramirez said quietly. "First we make examples of the troublemakers, then we establish new management. Within a week, no one will even remember your resistance." James checked his watch again. Something in his tone made Ramirez pause. He studied James more carefully, noting the lack of fear, the almost expectant stance. "You're planning something?" Ramirez realized. "Some last desperate move?" "Nothing desperate about it," James replied. "Just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Before James could answer, Big Steve's voice came through on the radio. "Federal vehicles approaching from all directions. Multiple agencies." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "You called the authorities? I told you, I own them." "Not all of them," James replied. "And not the ones coming now." Suddenly, powerful spotlights blazed from hidden positions around the rest stop, illuminating the entire parking lot. The circle of bikers was clearly visible now, as were the cartel soldiers inside. "What is this?" Ramirez demanded. "This," James smiled slightly, "is what happens when you target the wrong veteran at the wrong rest stop." Helicopter rotors thundered overhead as federal tactical teams appeared from concealed positions. Every photo Ramirez had taken, every threat he'd made, every bribe he'd offered, all had been documented, building an airtight RICO case against his entire organization. "You've been playing us," Ramirez said, realization dawning. "All of it. The resistance, the gradual breakdown, the appearance of isolation." "Had to draw you out," James confirmed. "Make you commit your forces, reveal your connections. Couldn't take down your operation without proof." Steel Vipers began scattering as federal agents moved in. The cartel soldiers reached for weapons but found themselves surrounded. Ramirez's security detail looked to him for orders. "It's over," James said quietly. "Your entire network is being rolled up as we speak. Every corrupt cop, every bought official, every distribution point. 20 years of empire building, gone in a single night." Ramirez's composed facade finally cracked. "Kill them!" he screamed. "Kill them all!" Chaos erupted as cartel soldiers and Steel Vipers tried to fight back, but James's veterans were ready. The rest stop became a battlefield as federal agents and trained fighters engaged the criminals from prepared positions. "You understand now?" James asked as he expertly subdued Ramirez. "Why this rest stop? Why these people? Every person you threatened, every family you targeted, they were all part of a community of veterans, law enforcement, and ordinary citizens who'd finally had enough." The battle was brief but intense. When it ended, dozens of Steel Vipers and cartel soldiers were in custody. Ramirez, his expensive suit now dirty and torn, watched in disbelief as his empire crumbled. "Impossible," he muttered. "I had every angle covered, every base secured." "Except one," James said as federal agents led Ramirez away. "You forgot that some things are worth fighting for. Some communities won't be broken, no matter how much pressure you apply." Dawn was breaking as the last arrests were made. Linda and Sarah emerged from the back office to survey the damage. The rest stop was battered but standing, like its defenders. "Was it worth it?" Cooper asked, watching federal agents processing prisoners. "All the risk? All the damage?" James looked around at the community that had stood together, that had risked everything to take down a criminal empire. "Ask them," he said quietly. "Ask every town and truck stop that won't have to live under Ramirez's shadow now. Some fights choose you. The only question is whether you're willing to stand and face them." The rising sun cast long shadows across the parking lot where federal agents were dismantling the last vestiges of Ramirez's operation. A new day was dawning at Crosswind Junction rest stop. A day without threats, without fear. All because two bikers had targeted the wrong veteran at the wrong rest stop. The sun climbed higher over Crosswind Junction as federal agents processed the last of the arrested Steel Vipers and cartel soldiers. Evidence teams worked methodically through the scene, documenting everything. James sat at his usual spot at the counter, watching the operation unfold while DEA agent Torres debriefed him. "Final count is impressive," she said, reviewing her notes. 87 Steel Vipers members, 23 cartel soldiers, and Ramirez himself. Plus, we're rolling up his entire network. Corrupt officials are falling like dominoes. James nodded, sipping his coffee. "How far does it reach?" 3 state police commanders, 12 local cops, 2 judges, even a state senator. Ramirez wasn't lying about his influence, but the evidence we gathered, she shook her head in amazement. Every threat, every bribe, every illegal order, all documented. Your people did incredible work. Linda approached with fresh coffee, carefully stepping around federal photographers. "So it's really over? All of it?" "The immediate threat, yes," James confirmed. "But there's more work to do. Organizations like this don't just disappear overnight." Cooper entered, looking exhausted but satisfied. "Just got word from Oklahoma City. They found Ramirez's main storage facility. Enough drugs to supply 3 states for a month. Street value over $50 million. "And that's just one location," Agent Torres added. "We're finding more every hour. This operation didn't just catch criminals. It exposed an entire infrastructure of corruption and trafficking." Sarah, who had been helping document damage to the diner, joined them. "I still can't believe it. All those threats, all that pressure. It was terrifying. But you knew, didn't you? You knew how it would end. James set down his coffee. I knew how it could end if everything went right. Ramirez had a playbook: intimidation, isolation, escalation. Once we understood that, we could use it against him, by letting him think it was working. Every time he thought he was breaking us, Cooper realized, he was actually giving us more evidence. But it only worked because everyone played their part perfectly, James finished. The fear had to look real. The pressure had to seem like it was working. Big Steve's voice crackled over the radio. Got more feds incoming. Looks like FBI brass wants to see this operation firsthand. Through the windows, they could see a convoy of official vehicles approaching. Black SUVs, but very different from Ramirez's. These carried the full weight of federal authority. Get ready, Agent Torres warned. They're going to want statements from everyone. This case is going to be huge. As if to emphasize her point, news vans began appearing at the periphery of the scene. The story was getting out. How a small rest stop had become the focal point for bringing down a major criminal enterprise. What happens to the Steel Vipers now? Linda asked, watching more gang members being led to transport vehicles. Most of them will make deals, Agent Torres explained. They'll give evidence against Ramirez's organization in exchange for lighter sentences. The gang's finished. No one will want to wear those colors after this. James stood, moving to the window. Outside, federal teams were documenting the elaborate surveillance network Carl Martinez had helped install. Every camera, every sensor had played its part in building the case. You know what really defeated them? He said quietly. It wasn't the fancy equipment or the federal backup. It was community. Every person who stood their ground, who refused to be intimidated, that's what Ramirez couldn't understand. Doc Wilson entered carrying a stack of files. Just finished compiling the medical reports. Got documented evidence of every threat, every act of intimidation. Even got footage of the Steel Vipers discussing their connection to Ramirez's operation. Perfect, Agent Torres said, accepting the files. This will help ensure the charges stick. RICO cases live or die on documentation. The FBI officials began arriving, suits and badges moving purposefully through the scene. They converged on James, eager to understand how a former Force Recon Marine had orchestrated such an elaborate sting. The really brilliant part, Cooper told them, was using their own surveillance against them. Every time they photographed someone to make a threat, we photographed them doing it. Every move they made to prove their power became evidence of their crimes, James confirmed. Sarah, still processing everything, asked, "But what about all the people they threatened? All the families they targeted?" Already handled, Agent Torres assured her. Protective details will remain in place until we're certain there's no remaining threat. Plus, everyone who helped with the operation will be eligible for witness protection if they want it. James shook his head. They won't need it. Ramirez's organization is done. Between the evidence we gathered and the deals his people will make to save themselves, there won't be anything left to threaten anyone. More news vehicles arrived as the story spread. Reporters set up cameras, eager to document the fall of a major criminal enterprise. Local residents began gathering at the edge of the scene, watching federal agents dismantle the organization that had terrorized their community. You should have seen Ramirez's face, Cooper said, when he realized it was all a trap. All that confidence, all that arrogance, gone in an instant. Pride, James noted. It's always their weakness. They get so used to being in control, they can't imagine anyone outmaneuvering them. Linda surveyed her damaged diner. The repairs will take weeks. Insurance probably won't cover all of it. Don't worry about that, Agent Torres interjected. There are federal programs for businesses damaged during major operations like this. Plus, asset forfeiture from Ramirez's organization will provide compensation. The day wore on as more officials arrived. More evidence was processed, and more details of the operation emerged. What had started as a simple stand against local intimidation had evolved into one of the largest organized crime busts in recent history. You know what amazes me? Sarah said, watching the proceedings. How everyone came together. Every person who helped, who took risks, They all had a part in this. James nodded. That's what Ramirez never understood. He thought he could isolate us, break us down individually. But real communities don't break. They get stronger under pressure. Agent Phillips approached with fresh intel. Just got word from the task force. They're finding Ramirez's connections in places we never expected. Shipping companies, trucking firms, even customs officials. His network went deeper than anyone imagined. He spent years building it, James replied. Patient, methodical, took over one route at a time, one official at a time. Used legitimate businesses to hide illegal operations. Through the windows, they watched as another group of arrested officials was brought in. Former police chiefs, corrupt judges, politicians, all caught in the web of evidence James's team had gathered. Latest from the FBI, Torres reported, checking her tablet. They've seized over $300 million in assets so far. Bank accounts, properties, businesses. Ramirez had legitimate holdings all over the country. Classic cartel strategy, James explained. Build a legitimate empire to hide the criminal one. Makes it harder to trace the money, harder to prove the connections. Big Steve's voice came over the radio. Got more federal transport vehicles incoming. Looks like they found another group of dirty cops. Linda shook her head in amazement. How did no one notice before? All this corruption? All these connections? People noticed, James said. They just couldn't prove anything. Ramirez was careful, compartmentalized everything. Each piece looked legitimate on its own, until he got greedy. Tried to expand too fast, too aggressively, Torres added. Made mistakes, like thinking he could intimidate a rest stop full of veterans. Sarah watched as more arrested officials were led in handcuffs to waiting vehicles. Will it change anything? Really change things? It already has, James replied. Every person who is afraid to speak up before is coming forward now. Every business that felt trapped is breaking free. The fear is breaking down. Cooper's radio crackled with updates. More arrests were being made across 3 states. Each person caught in the web was giving up others, trying to save themselves. The domino effect was spreading far beyond Crosswind Junction. You know what the real victory is? James said, watching the scene unfold. It's not just taking down Ramirez. It's showing other communities that they don't have to live in fear, that they can fight back. Doc Wilson entered with new surveillance footage. You need to see this. Cameras picked up Steel Vipers members at other rest stops trying to destroy evidence. Too late, though. We already documented everything. They're running scared, Torres observed. Word's spreading through the criminal underground. The Invincible cartel got taken down by a rest stop. Linda poured fresh coffee for the gathered group. Will they try to rebuild? Start over somewhere else? James shook his head. Not here, not anywhere near here. The mystique is broken. Everyone knows now. They're not invincible. They can be beaten. Outside, more news crews were arriving. The story was catching fire, not just the takedown of a cartel, but how it happened. A community standing together, refusing to break, turning the tables on those who tried to terrorize them. Got something else, Cooper said, checking his phone. State police found 3 more storage facilities. Drugs, weapons, documentation of bribes and threats. They're calling it a treasure trove of evidence. This case will take years to fully unravel, Torres added. Every piece of evidence leads to new connections, new crimes. Ramirez's empire was bigger than anyone suspected. Sarah watched as more federal agents arrived, more evidence was collected, more arrests were made. Hard to believe it all started with 2 bikers thinking they could push around a veteran. That's usually how these things go, James replied. Someone gets too confident, thinks they're untouchable, forgets that real strength isn't about having the most muscle or the most money. It's about having something worth fighting for. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Federal teams continued their work, methodically dismantling what had taken Ramirez decades to build. Each arrest, each piece of evidence, each seized asset was another nail in the coffin of his criminal empire. You know what the best part is? Cooper said, watching another transport vehicle pull away. Every community along their route is going to sleep better tonight. Every family they threatened, every business they tried to control, they're all free now. James stood at his usual spot by the window, watching the scene unfold. The rest stop was battered but unbowed, its defenders tired but proud. They had done more than just resist intimidation. They had struck a blow against organized crime that would resonate for years to come. Sometimes, he said quietly, the worst mistake a criminal can make is underestimating their target. Ramirez thought he was dealing with one old veteran at one small rest stop. Instead, he ran into a community that refused to break, that turned his own tactics against him. And now? Linda asked. Now we rebuild. We make this place stronger than before. And we remember, every time someone tries to rule through fear, there will always be people willing to stand against them. Always be communities ready to fight back. The sun began to set on Crosswind Junction rest stop, but the work was far from over. The story of how a small community had taken down a criminal empire was just beginning to spread, inspiring others to stand up against intimidation and corruption. James watched as the day's activities continued, knowing that what they had accomplished here would have ripple effects far beyond their small corner of Interstate 40. Sometimes the biggest changes start in the smallest places, like a rest stop where two bikers made the mistake of targeting the wrong veteran. 3 days after Ramirez's arrest, Crosswind Junction rest stop was still buzzing with activity. Federal agents had established a temporary command center in the parking lot, coordinating raids across 3 states. James watched from his usual spot as another group of arrested officials was brought in for processing. That's the 3rd police chief today, Cooper noted, joining him at the counter. Ramirez's network went deeper than anyone imagined. Not just police, Agent Torres added, spreading out new files. We've uncovered connections to shipping companies, trucking firms, even customs officials. He had people everywhere. James studied the documents. He spent years building this, patient, methodical, took over one route at a time, one official at a time. He paused, shaking his head. And it all came crashing down because he couldn't leave one rest stop alone. Some people can't stand being told no, Sarah remarked, bringing fresh coffee. The radio crackled with Big Steve's voice. Heads up, got media trucks approaching from the north. Looks like all the major networks this time. Through the windows, they could see a convoy of news vans approaching. The story had exploded overnight. A small-town rest stop's resistance leading to the exposure of a massive criminal enterprise. Everyone wanted details. They're calling it Operation Crosswind now, Agent Torres said. The Justice Department's making it a showcase case. Every prosecutor wants a piece of it. And then Linda emerged from her office where she'd been meeting with contractors. Just got the repair estimates. Insurance companies are actually being helpful for once. Seems they're eager to be on the right side of this story. Smart of them, Cooper observed. Nobody wants to be seen hindering the recovery of the rest stop that took down a cartel. More federal vehicles arrived, these carrying senior officials from Washington. The case had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Each arrest led to new revelations, new connections, new evidence of corruption. Latest from the FBI task force, Agent Torres reported, checking her phone. They've seized over $200 million in assets so far. Bank accounts, properties, businesses. Ramirez had legitimate holdings all over the country. James nodded. Classic cartel strategy. Build a legitimate empire to hide the criminal one. Doc Wilson entered with another stack of files. You need to see this, he said, spreading out surveillance photos. Remember those steel Vipers we spotted at other truck stops? Turns out they were setting up distribution points all along the major highways. A whole network. Perfect setup for moving product across state lines, Cooper realized. Using truck stops as hubs, corrupt officials as protection, and legitimate businesses as cover. Sarah, who had been listening, asked, "But how did no one notice before?" People noticed, James explained. They just couldn't prove anything. Ramirez was careful, compartmentalized everything. Each piece looked legitimate on its own. Until he got greedy. Tried to expand too fast, too aggressively, Agent Torres added. Made mistakes. Outside, the media presence grew as more reporters arrived. The parking lot was becoming a circus of cameras, microphones, and satellite trucks. Everyone wanted to tell the story of how a former Marine and a small community had brought down a criminal empire. "They're requesting interviews," Linda said, holding up a stack of messages. "Every major network plus newspapers, magazines." "No interviews yet," James decided. "Not until we're sure we've got all the major players. Some of Ramirez's people are still out there." The radio crackled again. "Got more federal transport vehicles incoming. Looks like they found another group of dirty cops." Through the windows, they watched as more arrested officials were brought in. Former officers, politicians, business leaders. People who had seemed respectable until Ramirez's network started unraveling. "You know what's really impressive?" Cooper mused. "How many ordinary people helped make this happen? Truckers reporting suspicious activity, mechanics noting unusual modifications to vehicles." "That's what brought Ramirez down in the end," James said. "He could buy officials, corrupt systems, but he couldn't buy an entire community's silence." Agent Torres nodded. "The evidence is overwhelming. Between the surveillance footage, financial records, and witness statements, we've got enough to put him away for several lifetimes." A commotion outside drew their attention. Federal agents were escorting Brick and several other Steel Vipers leaders from transport vehicles. They'd been brought back for additional questioning after new evidence emerged. "They're all turning on each other now," Cooper observed. "Every gang member, every corrupt official, they're all scrambling to make deals." "That's how these cases work," Agent Torres explained. "First one to talk gets the best deal, and everyone's talking." Inside the diner, contractors had begun initial repairs. The place was still battle-scarred, but there was progress. Each fixed window, each repaired fixture was a symbol of recovery. "Found something else you should see," Doc Wilson called out, waving James over to his laptop. "Been analyzing the financial records. Ramirez wasn't just using the truck stops for drug distribution. He was laundering money through them too." James studied the screen. "Complex operation. Used legitimate businesses to clean dirty money, then reinvested it in more legitimate holdings. Built his empire one layer at a time." "And now it's all coming down," Agent Torres said with satisfaction. "Every business, every account, every connection. We're taking it all." The day continued as more evidence emerged, more arrests were made, and more details of Ramirez's operation came to light. What had started as a local stand against intimidation had exposed a criminal network that spanned multiple states and industries. Sarah, watching the endless stream of federal activity, shook her head in amazement. "Hard to believe it all started with two bikers thinking they could push around a veteran." "That's usually how these things start," James replied. "Someone thinks they can bully their way to power, never realizing they're picking a fight they can't win." 1 week after Ramirez's arrest, the federal presence at Crosswind Junction had evolved from a tactical operation to a full-scale investigation hub. A week of revelations had exposed criminality on a scale that shocked even veteran investigators. James sat reviewing reports with Agent Torres while Cooper coordinated with FBI teams. "Latest numbers are staggering," Torres said, updating her files. "Over 300 arrests across 5 states, nearly $500 million in seized assets, 42 corrupt officials including 3 judges and a state senator. And we're still finding more." James studied surveillance photos showing more Steel Vipers being arrested at distant locations. "They're running out of places to hide." "That's the beautiful part," Cooper added. "Every time we arrest one, they give up 2 more. The whole network's collapsing like a house of cards." The radio buzzed with Big Steve's voice. "Got another convoy approaching. Looks like DEA bringing in more seized evidence." Through the windows, they watched as trucks loaded with confiscated drugs and money rolled into the makeshift federal compound. What had started as a simple resistance against local thugs had mushroomed into one of the largest organized crime busts in recent history. "You know what amazes me?" Sarah said, bringing fresh coffee. "How many lives this affected. Every person who was intimidated, every business that was extorted, and now they're all coming forward." We've got witnesses from truck stops across 3 states, Torres confirmed. Everyone Ramirez ever threatened, everyone the Steel Vipers ever intimidated, they're all telling their stories. Linda approached with a stack of newspapers. We're in all of them. Small town rest stop brings down criminal empire. Veteran stand exposes massive corruption. They're calling it the biggest organized crime bust since Al Capone. Media's missing the point, though, James noted. They want to make it about one person, one stand. But it was never about that. No, Cooper agreed. It was about community. Every person who helped, every witness who came forward. Doc Wilson entered with new intelligence reports. Just got word from the FBI task force. They've traced Ramirez's connections all the way to Mexico. Cartel leaders are scrambling, trying to distance themselves. Of course they are, James said. No one wants to be associated with such a massive failure. Ramirez didn't just lose his operation, he exposed vulnerabilities in the entire cartel structure. Outside, more media trucks arrived as the story continued to grow. Reporters were desperate for interviews, for the inside story of how a small rest stop had brought down a criminal empire. Got something else, Torres said, pulling up new files on her laptop. Remember those threatening photos Ramirez's people took? We're using them to identify more gang members. Every attempt at intimidation became evidence against them. The radio crackled again. More arrests in progress. State police just picked up the last major Steel Vipers chapter in Texas. James moved to the window, watching as more suspects were brought in. They never understood what they were really fighting, thought they could break people down individually, never realizing they were uniting an entire community against them. Sarah asked, "How many more are out there? How many of Ramirez's people are still free?" "Not many," Torres answered. "And those that are can't trust anyone. Every former ally is a potential informant now. Their world's gotten very small, very fast." A commotion outside drew their attention. Federal agents were escorting a group of former police officers, all in handcuffs, all former members of Ramirez's protection network. "That's the last of the corrupt highway patrol unit," Cooper noted. "The ones who were helping monitor drug shipments and blocking investigations." Years of suspicious activity reports that were quietly buried, Torres added. "We're reopening all of them." Inside the diner, repairs were progressing rapidly. Insurance money had come through, supplemented by federal funds for businesses damaged during major operations. Each fixed window, each repaired fixture was a symbol of recovery. "Got more intel," Doc Wilson called out, waving James over to his computer. "Remember those shipping companies we suspected were involved? Just found their real books. They were moving more than drugs, weapons, stolen goods, even people." James studied the data. Ramirez built a complete shadow transportation network, used legitimate businesses as cover, corrupt officials as protection. Perfect system. "Was perfect," Torres corrected. "Now it's evidence. Every connection, every transaction, it all helps build the case." The day continued as more arrests were made, more evidence was processed, and more details of the operation emerged. The ripple effects were spreading far beyond Crosswind Junction, far beyond even Ramirez's immediate operation. "You know what's really satisfying?" Cooper said, watching another group of suspects being processed. "Seeing all these tough guys realize how completely they lost. All that power, all that influence, gone." "Pride," James replied. "It's always their weakness. They get so used to being untouchable, they forget that no one really is." As evening approached, the Federal Command Center remained active. More raids were being planned, more warrants executed. The investigation that had started at Crosswind Junction was now spanning multiple states, multiple agencies. Linda approached with more news clippings. Other truck stops are speaking out now, telling stories about intimidation, about being forced to cooperate with Ramirez's operation. "That's the real victory," James said. "Not just taking down one criminal enterprise, but showing people they don't have to live in fear." The sun set on another day at Crosswind Junction rest stop, but the legacy of what had happened there would live on. A small community had stood up against intimidation and won, proving that even the most powerful criminal organizations can be brought down when people unite against them. Sometimes the biggest changes start in the smallest places, like a rest stop where two bikers made the mistake of targeting the wrong veteran, and a community decided to take a stand against fear itself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.